Hello, my name is Marco Arruda, and today I'm going to show how we can work with ROS, unit testing, and C++. This time I'm not going to answer a specific question because actually there's a lot of questions about ROS, C++, and unit testing. So I'm going to just show a kind of tutorial I have created, and you're going to be able to use this as a starting point to test your own code, okay? So in order to do that, I'm going to use RDS, the ROS Development Studio, and I'm going to start with this project. Actually, it's already done, so I'm gonna go over the files and explain what is being done here. And after the video, you can, or along the video, you can just follow the link in the description of this video and see the repository. And you can find the files there and copy and see the code better on your own pace, okay? So let's start with the CMake file just to show what we have here. So let's change it for make file. Basically what we are doing here is to, well, this is a ROS basics, so we are defining a project here. This is common. And then we have to use this definition here, add definitions, because we are using the Google testing library, gtest, to test C++ code, so we have to add these instructions, okay? So we are using C++ 11, and this instruction here, wall -g. Okay, this is ROS stuff, so you don't have to care about it. And finally, we have here a library. I'm calling it Talker. Okay, it's inside our package here, so testing folder, it's the name of our package. We have the CMake file, this one, and a package file, okay? And inside it we have a library called Talker. So here in this file we are defining the methods we are using in our publisher. And in order to declare the methods and the class, we are using a header file, so it's inside the include folder, and we have the testing folder, talker.h. This is our class, so it's a very simple class just to show how we can work with a class and test it. Okay, so we have a constructor here. I just have a property here called pub, which is actually a publisher. So I'm defining using a node handle object, and this node handle object is being defined right here. Publisher, the same I'm using inside the constructor, okay? And a couple of methods. Do some math, it's receiving a value and it returns another integer, okay? And the talk method, it's a void method just to publish the values, and it's receiving a number, which is the number that is going to be published, okay? So we have here a header file, the definition of the functions, the methods of the class, and finally we have a node, the talker node, and this talker node is just including our talker header file, okay? And inside the main function we are just doing ROS stuff. I mean, we are initializing our node, we are creating this object, talker, which comes from the talker header file, defining a loop rate, okay, just ROS stuff here, and then defining an integer value. We are starting from 3, and then inside our loop, while ROS okay, we are talking or publishing this value, okay, and printing ROS info just to make sure everything is working while we are run our node in a terminal, okay. So the value is updated using the talker do some math method, and then loop rate sleep and ROS spin once, okay, just ROS stuff here using our class, okay, return 0 and it's done, okay. So basically we have two methods that it's important to test, because the first one the talk method, it's just publishing a value. Okay, so we are publishing a string here, hello world, plus the number we are working with. So message data equals to this string, and then publishing the string using the pub attribute from the class. Okay, and our business, let's call like this. We are doing some math. You can have a filter or anything, something else. But here we are just doing a very simple math. We are getting a value, and then we are defining the next value. So the value we are gonna return, and we are returning the value that we receive, sorry, and increasing just plus 5. So next value equals to 5 plus the value we are getting. So if this value is higher than 50, we are returning 0. Otherwise, returns the next value. Okay, it's just a math. It's not important we are doing here. It's just to show that we have some rules. So basically, we are returning 0. We are returning the value we are receiving plus 5. But if this sum is higher than 50, we are returning 0. Okay. So the value we are gonna have after calling do some math has to be between 0 and 50. It cannot be lower or higher. Okay. So now we want to test this function. So because we have defined some rules, and in order to test, we have created this file here, tests. I'm calling tests_1 C++. And here, what do we have to do? We have to include our talker class. So just include testing/talker.h. We have also to include the ROS library because we are using some ROS methods here. Okay, and then including the gtest library, which is the one that provides us all the definitions for the test methods. We are using some threads and the chrono library. Okay. So first of all, we have to define a test suite class. So my test suite, and it's a public, and using these definitions here. Okay. And creating 2 public methods, the constructor and this another one, just to have a class defined. Okay. And then actually we are just gonna use this class to handle our test functions. Okay, so we have here a test function definition, so we have to use like this, test_f, and passing the class, and just giving a name. Here I'm giving this low value name. Okay, and basically I'm creating this value equals to 3, so this is our initial value, and then I'm calling the do some math method from our class, talker class, and then I'm asserting that this value must be equal to the initial value plus 5, because this is what we expect the do some math method returns for us. Okay, so this value should be its initial value plus 5. This is what we expect from the class. Okay, and the second method, we are passing initial value equals to 49, and we are expecting the method should sum 5, but of course 49 plus 5 is equals to 54, so we have to have 0 as the return value. Okay, because we don't return any values higher than 50. Okay, that's the rule. This is how we want to do this. Okay, and finally you have to define the main function. This is just a standard way of defining it. You don't have to pay much attention to this part. It's just initializing a ROS node here, so I'm calling it test node, and then initializing the Google test library, creating a thread to handle the tests, call this function here, run all tests, and have the response. Okay, and finally ROS shutdown to shut down the ROS node, the testing node. Okay, and finally, as we have defined here in our CMake file, we need a launch file to run the tests. Okay, it's not just an executable that we are gonna use, but we are launching from a launch file. Okay, so I'm creating here the launch file. It's called gtest.test, and inside the launch file, the launch tag, we have a new tag called test. The name of the test, so test name unit tests. The name of the package we are working with. Here it's called testing. The type testing is test. And the name, just a name. You can use the name you prefer here. Okay. So now that we have all the files configured, let's test it. So let's use our terminal, and we have here our launch file. So I'm sorry, actually let's compile our workspace first. And in order to run the tests, we are not gonna run like this, ROS launch, but using the ROS way of testing, which is catkin make and run tests. So this is a directive of the catkin make instruction to run the tests using the launch file, because we have defined it in our CMake lists file catkin enable testing. Okay, and this is the instruction we have to use. So catkin make run tests. So we are basically compiling our workspace and then testing the executable through a launch file. This is a sort of complex, I think, but this is the way of testing in ROS and C++. Okay. Okay, so we have here two tests. They were executed, and we got success in both of them. And the name of the test, so we have here testing ROS unit test, low value, the name we have defined it in the method. This test had passed, and this another one had passed also. Okay, so success for two tests. Okay, great. And let's just take a look in our function. Let's say now we have defined that our talker method can handle values to 16. Okay, just to show the dynamics of unit testing. And now we are gonna, before running our node, we want to make sure our tests are passing. So testing, here it is. I'm sorry, tests. Okay, so here we are testing, and after passing 49 as the initial value, we should receive 0. Okay, but of course it has to fail because we have just changed the rule here in our definition. So let's compile again and test. And we have a fail here, of course, because so the low value, it's okay because we're using a lower value, so we are expecting to have the initial value plus 5, and it's fine, it's working. But after passing 49, we are receiving 54 as the value, okay, and it should be 0. Actually, the test is wrong, or the code is wrong. It depends, because the way you are developing, okay. For unit testing, you should be developing your test code before, and then creating the code that is going to do the math, okay. So we have fail here because we have just changed the way we are testing. I'm sorry, we have just changed the method here, okay. So I'm gonna put it back to the way it was. And finally, let's try to run our node, which is defined right here, talker node, and see how this is working. Okay, basically in our node we are initializing the value. It is equals to 3. Okay, and inside our loop we are assigning do some math method to the value and doing this all the time inside the loop. Okay, so let's run it. We have just compiled. Let's run testing talker node. Okay, so here we have 3 and then h and then 13, and we are increasing the value. Now we reach 50h and it gets back to 0 because we cannot have value higher than 60. Okay, this is the last value we have defined in our class. Okay, so this is basically how you can, the structure of ROS unit testing for C++. You can use this code as a starting point to test your own code. Of course, this is a very simple example, but this can be used because there's a lot of boring stuff and bureaucracy, let's call it, in our CMake file in order to test something in ROS and C++. Okay, I hope it can be helpful for you, and if you like this kind of video, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and get a new video about ROS every day. See you!